like to call the March 15th, 2022 meeting of the Town of East Long Meadow Planning Board to order. Those in attendance are myself, Russell Denver, George Kingston, Cassandra Cherasuelo, and Peter Punderson. We're also joined by Nina Fazio from the Office of Planning and Community Development. I am required to ask if there is anyone who might be in the audience who is recording this meeting, and if so, would you please raise your hand? You can be brought into the meeting and you can identify yourself and the means in which you are recording the meeting. I don't see anybody who is doing that, so I'm going to bring it back. Our clerk is not with us this evening, but I'm certainly I'm sure the first order of business is approval of the minutes of the March 1st, 2022 meeting minutes. Hopefully people have an opportunity to review. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved, George.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, by roll call. Mr. Kingston?
Aye.
Mr. Cherasuelo?
Aye.
Mr. Punderson?
I was not at the meeting.
So you abstain?
Abstained.
Yeah. And I'm a yes as well. So in lieu of Mr. Torsha not being here this evening, would someone please step up and call the act as clerk this evening?
I can't. I have no way to read the material, so I apologize for that.
I'm just switching because my internet is not working and it keeps pausing.
Okay, we'll give you a minute.
Nina, do you
Sorry.
have the list open of attendees?
Yes.
I don't see the first guest on that list, so should I be looking for a different name?
I am only aware of Rebecca Lombardi for the first
Okay.
one,
All right.
unless someone else raises their hand.
So George, do you have the agenda in front of you?
You're muted, George.
I have the agenda and I can read what's on the agenda, but I don't
Yes.
have all of the rest of the documentation printed out. But we can start with that.
Yep, thank you.
Do number one, site plan review waivers, case STRW 2022-3. Request for a site plan review waiver for your best self aesthetics at 45 Crane Avenue, Assessor's Parcel ID 27-24-A-1, in an existing structure located in the business zoning district. The applicant is Rebecca Lombardi, 32 Baldwin Drive, Hamden, Mass. 01036.
Thank you, George. Is the petitioner available?
I don't see a hand or a name associated with that.
Is Rebecca Lombardi in the meeting? If so, would you please, raise your Zoom hand and you can be brought into the meeting. What's the pleasure of the board?
Continue.
Is that a motion?
Make a motion to continue this to the next meeting.
Do I have a second?
I think this is a site plan review. I would suggest we use the word table,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
and I'll second tabling it to the next meeting.
Any discussion? Hearing none, by roll call. Mr. Punderson,
Aye.
Mr. Kingston,
Aye.
Ms. Cherasuelo,
Aye.
and I'm a aye as well. Next item, Mr. Kingston, please.
Public hearings, case SD-D 2022-1, definitive subdivision plan for Happy Acres subdivision. Request by applicant for definitive subdivision approval for a 23 lot subdivision on a 31.8 plus or minus acre lot at 43 South Bend Lane, assessors parcel ID 54-6-0, located in the Residence A zoning district. The applicant is Marlene Goldstein, 43 South Bend Lane, East Long Meadow, Mass. 01028.
So is Marlene Goldstein available for this?
Yep, here she comes.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Rob Levesque from our Levesque Associates, also here representing Marlene Goldstein. I believe she's with her family and will be on in a minute. Thank you.
We're on now.
Okay, great. So Ms. Goldstein, is Mr. Levesque your representative for this hearing?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Mr. Levesque, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Rob Levesque from our Levesque Associates again. We have put together a set of plans for a definitive subdivision application, similar to what you have seen for the preliminary. If it pleases the board, what I would like to do is share some plans. I'll do that now if that's okay.
Sure.
Make sure I'm sharing the right screen. I don't think I am.
And while you're doing that, Mr. Levesque, did you happen to see the recommendations from the Department of Public Works that were forwarded to the planning board today?
No, sir, I have not today. Nope.
Okay. So Nina, do you have the ability to send that to Mr. Levesque while we're in this hearing?
Yep, I can try and do that right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Okay, with any luck, you are looking at a cover sheet. You see
Yep.
that?
We are.
Okay, so I'm going to run through the plans if pleases the board. I will start with an existing conditions plan that was prepared by Smith Associates. Smith Associates had done the boundary survey and the existing conditions of the subject property. So just to reorient your folks to our plans, Summers Road, Route 83 is at the top of the plan. That's generally north. We also have South Bend Lane here. Miss Goldstein's property is right here. There was an A&R lot divided out of the property. I believe was sold to a local builder. The subdivision is proposed on a portion of the remaining land of the Goldstein family. There's also some other parcels that they own throughout town on different areas. This is specific to the proposed subdivision itself. We have generally a slightly sloping piece of property that runs towards a wetland system that's on the southwest side of the property. We've delineated through Wetland Consultants Inc., Heather Coney, delineated the subject property and determined a boundary of bordering vegetated wetlands along the edge of the property or the subject area, I'll call it, and then also a perennial stream. There was a series of test pits and borings done throughout the property to determine seasonal high groundwater, as well as look for the suitability of the soil as it relates to drainage and other potential development constraints. So we've done that. I guess we'll call it to the northeast, there's also another bordering vegetated wetland that's off the subject property. That's not a part of the proposed subdivision. Part parcel, which I will give you kind of an outline of here, starting at South Bend Lane, going in a counterclockwise fashion. This is the subject property for the definitive subdivision that the lots would be carved out of. There's also going to, you'll see on a subsequent plan set, there's also some drainage easement areas and open space type of areas that will be utilized for the drainage. And we'll show you that in subsequent sheets. Any questions on the existing conditions plan that I'm showing? Hearing none. Oops, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So the definitive plan, I'll show you the layout first, and we'll kind of get into the kind of the construction details. But we're proposing 23 subdivision lots. So that does not include a parcel that would be located off of South Bend Lane. As mentioned, this is a parcel that was divided off previously through an A&R that I believe Smith Associates or our office submitted. I'm not sure who submitted that one, but that was divided off recently. And then this would be another piece that's not technically part of the subdivision, but obviously directly adjacent there too, and does have frontage on Happy Acres Lane. The two roads that we're proposing, Happy Acres Lane and Farmer's Circle, come off. We had basically, I believe it was the same, almost I don't want to say identical, but a very similar layout in the preliminary stage. Our lots are numbered 1 through 23 in a clockwise fashion around the roadways. You can see that we have a stormwater parcel A to the south. That's what I was referring to earlier. The outline of the subdivision that I was showing you is this line here, comes around, includes that stormwater parcel here, and then there's remaining land to the south that will not be part of that subdivision, or this subdivision, I should say. We have a series of note sheets, which are not real exciting for a public hearing, but they tell the contractors how to develop the proposed roadway and associated infrastructure. On this sheet here, this is sheet C3, a little bit more information for you. This is showing the site grading. A little bit hard to see on mine, so you're probably looking at a screen as well. So let me see if I can zoom in just ever so slightly. So we have the proposed roadway grades. We are raising the roadway. We anticipate that these houses, a lot of these houses will have the opportunity for what I would call a walkout or partial walkout basement. Most of them, a lot of them would have what I would call an English basement, which would be a partial walkout in the back with egress windows so that, you know, folks can actually finish their basement and feel and meet fire code for getting people in and out of their basement safely. The reason for that is we want to make sure that we're doing our best to, set these houses in such a manner that people can not have to worry about too much waterproofing. There is seasonal high groundwater on the subject property. So it's pretty standard in New England to be dealing with that, but we want to try to set the roadways up a little bit so that we are out of groundwater as much as possible. We are picking up all the roadway water with a series of catch basins, deep sump catch basins that run from manholes through HDPE conveyance pipe into these stormwater basins that we've located. We have two basins, one here on the south side and another here on the southeast side. They accommodate all of the water from the essentially from the front of the lot forward, or sorry, maybe the break line of the house, I should say, forward. If you were to assume a break line in the middle of these footprints that we're showing, and then that would run towards the street. All the street water, all the new impervious is accommodated. We have a stormwater management system that meets the DEP standards that were issued in 2008. As part of that, as Mr. Kingston and the other members are aware, having been involved with the Conservation Commission, that we're required to match pre and post development runoff flows. I know it's often a question for abutting landowners and folks about how we're handling our water. So we're essentially required to, I'll call it detain our water in a series of these bioretention or infiltration basins. And we're basically metering out the water at the same rate that it was at at those design points in the pre-development condition. So we're matching the pre-development condition in the post-development condition. And we have all of the 10 standards that have to be met, not only because it's required under your zoning and subdivision regulations, or I should say subdivision regulations, but it's also required as part of our submission with this plan to the Conservation Commission. This plan will require the filing of a notice of intent. We have filed that notice of intent. I had one public hearing with the Conservation Commission. I anticipate that they will be walking the subject property, and I believe it was, I don't hold me to the date, but it might be the 19th. I think it's the 19th in the morning on the 19th. The site has been staked out. The center line of the proposed road has been staked out. The planning board, as part of the planning board requirements, as well as the Conservation Commission had requested the same. So that is completed, and the site can be viewed at a potential site visit, where you would see the center line of the road and the proposed basins laid out. I believe all of the waivers requested in the preliminary are consistent with what we're asking for, fairly minimal. I believe we're looking for sidewalks on one side of the street. As you can see from the plan, it's a little hard to see. There's sidewalks shown on one side for both roadways. And we had kind of worked out, kind of the interpretation of the roadway lengths as it related to, the distance for a cul-de-sac. So I believe we're consistent with that as well from the preliminary. There has been some minor changes, I believe, some adjustments to the lots, and because of stormwater and other reasons, we've adjusted a little bit. For the purposes of your information, we did show building footprints. We don't anticipate that they will be exact rectangles or necessarily what we're showing, but we want to show the general grading finished. We call them top of wall, TOW, top of wall, to be achieved by contractors, so that we're not getting any I'll say anybody kind of going off the radar screen in terms of what they go to build once the subdivision is in. We kind of want it to be consistent and have it be a clean, critical path from development of the road to construction of the homes, despite the fact that those will be individual builders developing each of those properties as well as homeowners. So I know there's a lot of information here. There's a lot more information in our plan set. Landscaping, I have the detailed cross sections of all of the infrastructure shown on a series of sheets. Detail of how the stormwater basins will function, elevations of the same, cross sections, etc. So I think at this point, if it's okay with the chair, I turn it back to the board. We can go through anything you would like in our set, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, sir.
Are there questions from the board before we open it to the public for comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Two questions. First of all, who is going to own the stormwater parcel?
There will be, well, I guess there's really two options. The stormwater parcel could be owned by one of the lot owners, or it could be owned by the homeowners association. It would probably be logical that it's owned by a homeowners association, given that there are two stormwater basins on the parcel, so that the owners of the lots would arguably be jointly and severally responsible for the maintenance of the stormwater basins. And easements to each of the basins are shown, and those would be put in place in the event that the town did have to take action. They like to have easements. They typically don't want to take over the basins, but they would like to have access in the event that they need to. There's typically a bond, and I don't need to tell you folks this, but obviously if there's a bond required for the maintenance of these basins, et cetera, insurance for the safety, those are all pieces that we would anticipate would be conditions of the decision of the board.
My comment on your answer is that for the last 10 years at least, and maybe longer, we have not been allowing homeowners associations to be responsible for the basins, because we have found out by sad experience that that does not work. and the town has typically required that all land within a subdivision be apportioned to some lot on the subdivision rather than a homeowners association. Not that we couldn't reconsider that, but that has been our policy in the past. My second question is the parcel of land to the north east of the subdivision. Does it have frontage anywhere?
Well, yeah, so there's access, so there is access through an easement. So it's not landlocked. There is an easement to the back portion of the property. But as far as frontage, I would argue that there is not legal frontage for that parcel.
I believe we had discussed during the preliminary that that would be possibly attached to lot 3 or lot 4 as an estate lot. I notice you have not done that in this, just a comment that you have not done this in this definitive plan.
Yep, I think your statement is accurate. That I believe that was our plan at that point. We did have some discussion on that. We did talk to the neighbor, a couple of the neighbors, whether they would potentially be interested in that parcel. And it could still be attached to any of those lots along that side, I guess 3 through 7. And again, you know, through discussions with the board, obviously we want to do what's, you know, makes sense for the town and obviously for the developer or owner. So if Stormwater Parcel A ends up being part of a lot, we understand, you know, we understand the maintenance issues that the town and other towns have experienced as it relates to stormwater basins. I don't know what the best solution is, to be honest. I think it's a double-edged sword with the stormwater stuff. As far as that other parcel, it certainly could be made part of one of the lots. But at this point, I believe it's the plan of the Goldstein family to hold on to that. And because there's an easement in place, you know, I believe legally, you know, we can check with their attorney, Mr. Levine, but I believe legally we felt that it had the access to be parceled off as not, quote unquote, not a building lot. Kind of a backland, you know, wood lot type of piece of property. But we would be happy to, you know, look at that closer and get an opinion from the attorney, you know, formal one.
Additional questions from the board before we open it to the public?
I have a couple.
Yep, go ahead.
If you look at lot 3 through 7, why can't you just extend the lot lines all the way to the rear? In other words, the line that you're on right now, break that and just take all the side lot lines and bring them straight back all the way to the end where the dotted lines are.
We could. There was, to be frank, there was some question about whether or not they would, these landowners would want to own that property back there. There's some wetland related conservation jurisdiction items that we want to make sure that don't get folded into, you know, lot owners' responsibilities. So I think the Goldstein family took it upon themselves to hang on to that for now. So that was really our line of thinking, to kind of keep the subdivision and the potential purchasers of the subdivision, you know, independent of that parcel at this point.
Okay. Second question, how much are you going to elevate the roadway?
It does vary. Let me zoom in for you. Probably, how are you? Just so I know, guys, because I'm looking at a screen on myself. Are you guys seeing everything okay? Generally?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So let me just give you a couple locations. So here's the we're calling this farmer circle, I guess. So the elevation of, let me see if I can find it. So you'll see there's where my cursor is. There's an elevation of 238.
Yep.
We follow that dashed line back, that 238 right here. That's the existing grade. Our proposed grade there is 239. So not too big of a deal with the roadway there. But let me just show you as we go back. So that land also drops. So where the house is, say on lot, I'm just giving you different examples, but so that, you know, so the house on lot 16, if we have a grade in the front yard of about we're going to call, 240, we'll call it right here, that contour, with a top of wall of 243, The backyard has an elevation of 236 proposed and about 234 existing. So this would be a little bit of earth, a little bit of earthwork, but generally not too far from grade over here. So we'd be filling the front yards a little bit to make sure the grades are back, but pretty consistent with what you would see from a roadway grading point of view. I'm sorry, a lot and roadway point of view. Over here, we're pretty much at grade with an elevation of 246 and 246 here. There is some areas where we were bringing it up a little bit more.
Yeah, the elevations are just a little hard to read, so you'll have to call them.
Yeah, let me zoom. Yeah, let me zoom in.
So Mike, I'm just wondering how you're going to get walkouts. Is the land graded that much back there? I've walked it a million times.
It feels flat, right? It does feel flat, but so just to give you some perspective, so if you're at the back of Mrs. Goldstein's property, 240 is this elevation right here, this dashed line. And as you get back where stormwater basin is, you're about 234 existing, 230 at the backside of the basin. So, you got a good 10-foot grade change, believe it or not.
Yep.
But it does feel flat because it's pretty wide piece of property. But, when I was talking to the Conservation Commission, I was explaining the fill we were bringing in for the houses, and we're kind of building the houses up. But it's really a lot less related to the road than, and I might have misrepresented that a little bit, maybe even a little bit aggressively. But we are staking out, just for your information as requested, we staked out center line of road station points. I think we're every 100 feet. And then we'll have a cut and a fill on that stake. So when we walk it, you guys will be able to see where the roadway elevation will be in relationship to the existing ground. So that will help.
If anybody understands cut and fill, I happen to be able to do grade work, but you'll have to explain it to them, I'm sure.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, exactly. And it'll basically be, and I'll be able to show you, with a tape measure. Okay, the road would be up 3 feet here or 2 feet, whatever it might be. But
I'm just concerned with the amount of trucking going in and out of one point of access and egress off of Summers Road on a South Bend Lane.
Yes. So we did have, and I should have mentioned this, and I believe a copy has been provided, but we did have some traffic work done based on the information that was requested. So we could certainly get into that. And I think when we do our site visit, it probably makes sense to take a quick look. You have an acute, kind of an acute angle going from Summers Road, with Summers Road and South Bend Lane. I would anticipate, and I don't really know, to be honest, where exactly the trucks might be going. I'm trying to think of where some of the local, actually you would know better probably where some of the trucks would be coming from. Would you think they would mostly be coming from East Long Meadow, or probably not from the Connecticut side, right?
I have no idea. It depends on where they're going to get all their fill from, but it just depends. It's just a lot for the people that are on the road. There's only one point of access and egress. You're building up the place. I mean, I understand you have to do it, but it's just a consideration you want to have for the existing residents.
Yeah, what we've been able to do in the past, and point well taken, and certainly is the case. I think what we've been able to do in the past is two things. One, kind of work on a construction management plan in terms of street sweeping and other stuff, not just in the proposed roadway, but in South Bend Lane. The other thing is, as we move forward, we know that you're going to have houses they're not all built at once, right? And we anticipate this will probably be phases. So understanding the phasing, kind of communicating with the neighbors, making sure that the site contractor is aware. The good news is Mrs. Goldstein is one of the folks that would be affected, so she certainly would not want to cause problems. So we'd be happy to look at conditions for the maintenance and the construction of the existing roadway. And oftentimes we've been asked to look at the condition of the roadways so that if something is damaged during construction, that can be kind of at least cataloged ahead of time and then after, just in case the town says, hey, this roadway was not in this condition prior to construction. So those are things we often look at. The good news is most of these construction vehicles are going to be fairly reasonable in size and character. And it's probably going to be, dust control and making sure that the street is swept properly. And just so the board is aware, any subdivision or any project that we do, that anyone does, is required to do a stormwater pollution prevention plan, which is required for any project over an acre of land. And this is obviously over an acre of land. So through the entire construction of this project, not only will there be an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission, but there'll be a stormwater pollution prevention plan that has to be adhered to by the contractor, maintained, and before and after rain events and during dry times, all of that will have to be maintained and cataloged in what we call it a pocket permit. The permit is kept on site and it's updated. It's a living document through the construction process.
Are there other questions from the board before we open it to the public? Hearing none, I would like to open the public hearing on this, and I see Mrs. Goldstein. So you're mute. Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to bring something to your attention, or maybe I'm misunderstanding the conversation. This is the official access to for Happy Acres, but what we have down here, where is my
Pretty
house?
sure you can't see it.
Okay, you can't see it.
So I can explain. So next to her house, there's another easement where we could probably bring trucks in and drive through there as well. That's actually 60 feet wide. So that's another, for as far as the trucking and the dirt and all that, that's another way that we could probably bring in trucking as well. So it's not going all the way up and down the street.
Or you could say in this way and out the other, or whatever. That's also used to bring in utilities. Get closer to finish off the road.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak either in favor or against this project? Wish to be heard, please raise your
Can
Zoom
anybody
hand.
hear? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I
is that
can
Carl?
hear someone. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Carl Perella, the real estate
Okay.
broker.
Yep.
Based on the neighborhood meetings and the people that we've been speaking with about a potential project that might be coming to town, we've gotten tremendous support from the public and a lot of interest in people buying lots and being able to build their own homes at their leisure. And we've also, in the restrictive covenants, allowed a 2-year window for them to build their own home. So I don't anticipate a rush of 23 homes being built at once. So that would relieve Pete with his issues about the trucking. I think that we're probably going to have 1 or 2 houses a year being built. And also because of the shortages of lumber and piping and so forth, there's a lot of delays that will probably take place. So a lot of support from the public that I've gotten as a real estate broker in town for 35 years. Just to add to we're much in favor of this project. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard on this matter? Please raise your hand. You can be brought into the meeting. Mr. Mackey, is there anyone else?
There is. Hang on. Rob, can we, I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe it's helpful to have it up, but
There we go.
Thank you. That's good.
Sorry about that.
I see a Bob and Lisa. We can't see you and you're muted. And Mr.
Okay,
Mr. Levesque, if you could read the comments from the board, from the Department of Public Works while we're going through this, please.
Let me just find those real quick.
Okay, Bob and Lisa,
I believe I'm off mute. Are we off mute?
you're off mute, but we can't see you.
Okay, is that okay? Do
We
you
would
want to see
prefer-
us?
Yes, we do. We wish to see you. Yeah.
I'm holding my phone, so
Okay,
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. So, I know I read the traffic study. We read the traffic study. It was obviously done by someone that doesn't live here. It is very difficult during rush hour to get in and out of this street. The street entrance is very narrow. And, there have been several close calls with, coming in and out because 83 is pretty fast and it's kind of a sharp turn into the street. So we have concerns about that. And
Okay.
I appreciate Mr. Punderson, making comments about the trucks that are going to be coming in and out because we're concerned about that as well.
Can you give us your last name and what your address might be?
Yeah. Last name is Butcher, Butcher.
Okay.
And we live at 44 South End.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do we have other individuals who'd like to be heard on this matter? Please raise your hand. Be brought in. I don't see anyone else.
Might be.
I would accept a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that we continue the public hearing at this point. I have real concerns that may affect the design of the subdivision, and we may need to see revisions to this plan. If we close the public hearing, that shuts everything down.
Okay.
I would suggest at this point we take it back to the board and then decide whether to continue or close.
Okay. So it's back to the board. I have not said anything. I think I'd like to ask a couple of questions if the board members are okay with that. So I believe it was almost a year ago that you were first here for the preliminary. And I did raise issues about the traffic and the speed on Summers Road. And I think I asked you specifically if you would meet with the public safety officer with the police department and see whether there was something that the police would recommend or the Department of Public Works would recommend with slowing the traffic down, at least from probably the country store further down, because I think once you go past there, I think it comes up to 45 if I have my memory right. And I think once you go past the Apple place, it goes down from 50 to 45. Mrs. Butcher was correct. Coming out of South Bend and taking a left going toward the Rotary could be difficult. And so I'm inquiring on whether you actually did meet with the safety officer of the police department, or you met with the Department of Public Works to address those concerns, or did you just produce the traffic study?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So we hired McMahon Associates to produce the traffic study. Their typical protocol would have been, I cannot confirm this myself. I will have to confirm it for you before the next meeting. But their typical protocol is to reach out to the police department. They typically look for crash data at intersections, and that's typically held at the police department. And at that time, I would have expected that they had a conversation with the public safety officer. But I will certainly need to confirm that because I do not have that information for sure.
I think you can just visualize. You come up, you go past St. Michael's, go past Brownstone, go past the police station, and then you start to do that long downhill, and people pick up speed there. And that's something I would want to slow down. And then coming the other way, I mentioned from Apple Place forward. So I'd like to know whether they indeed took those extra steps that we asked them to. Okay.
Yeah, I'll find out. And then, am I understanding you correctly? And that the potential goal would be to see if we could reduce the speed limit or posted speed limit in that area. Is that accurate?
So I'm a lay person when it comes to traffic and all of that, but I certainly travel that road enough. I think just the average person would be able to see that by adding 23 homes, so many, trips a day, that if you did reduce the speed limit a bit, that certainly would enhance safety in that area. At least that's of my humble opinion. So I want to see whether that could be accomplished or not.
Sure, I will have them comment specifically on that suggestion, as well as comment if they have not, see if they can meet with the safety officer and then provide information based on that conversation.
And then there are obviously, unfortunately, last minute things that were referenced by Mr. Christensen. The majority of those look like they just needed to be added to your plans. So that would certainly need to be addressed as well.
I do have, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to read those items.
I don't believe we need to do those, to do that. I think we will incorporate in our request to you that they be done before you come back, so that we have a clean set of plans that we act on.
Yeah, looking at them now, they look probably really straightforward housekeeping type of items.
Yeah. And then I was a little confused with Mr. Perella's answer. So I guess I will ask you and or Ms. Goldstein. I think he said there's a great deal of interest, and that's wonderful for the Goldsteins. He said something about a 2-year limit in which they can then begin to build their homes.
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So when a subdivision obviously is constructed or approved and constructed, the owner, developer sometimes will put restrictive covenants on. Sometimes they say you can't leave your garage door open or no clotheslines or those types. So I believe they don't want people to buy lots and then just drag on forever where it's going to be a problem. So they have elected to take it upon themselves to put a 2-year time limit from, I believe, the date of purchase to when they would have to start their home. And I would ask Ms. Goldstein or Carl to clarify. I think it's to start their home. I don't think it's to complete, but maybe it is.
Yeah. Okay, so this is Marlene Goldstein. I went through several properties or lots that were built in East Long Meadow that had homeowners things in them. And we went through that and we said, this is old, this is this is that, this might be good, and I reviewed it with my attorney and a number of people on that. The whole idea there is you're right. You want the whole house does not have to be built, but from the time they start it, that they frame it, put it up, and get everything you need on the outside of it done, which would include a driveway. And then if they wanted to finish it off in pieces on the inside, that would be that. When I look at those homeowners things, some of them went in high numbers or less numbers, a year, 18 months, and I thought that was not giving anybody a lot of time. If they don't start the house, okay, there's nothing that's going to become a kind of a black eye to the property. Okay. But there are other people who will buy property. They're going to put up their home and they're going to want everything to look nice. And if the house next door to you is standing like a shack, that's not fair to the rest of the folks who kind of mind their peace and did what you want. But that was the idea there. Yeah. We've then sold one house, and actually I didn't have any right to give them the homeowners thing, and they were actually very happy with it. That's fine, we're good with that, so it's not a big deal, but if it became one, then that's what homeowners associations are for.
So I think I'd like to actually as part of when you come back to see a copy of the restriction, because it really goes to Mr. Punderson's point, because I'm still having a little confusion here, that if you want to spread out the amount of construction traffic. So it's not all, pushed into one time zone and it becomes really a nuisance for the neighbors. So if you sell all the properties and work needs to be done within 2 years, you're really still condensing, all of the construction within that time period rather than spreading it out further. So if you could just share that with us, that would be wonderful. That's a request I have. So
I think I would.
There's hold on. So there is a motion, or George, do you want to make a motion?
Not yet, Mr. Chairman. I
Okay.
would like to speak to a couple of other issues,
Okay, go ahead.
just so they're on the record. As I mentioned, we don't normally allow a homeowners association to own the basins because of our bad experiences in the past. And if you want specifics, I could talk to specific subdivisions where that has been a major issue. Okay. Secondly, I want to ask, I didn't see anything from the fire department on the request for the waiver for the extended cul-de-sacs. And if we haven't gotten that yet, I would like to have that in the record prior to voting on the waivers. Thirdly, I am very concerned about the newly created lot without frontage. I have had credible allegations from people in the area of dumping in the quarries on that lot. And I am very concerned that at some point in the future, a future owner of that lot would become aware of the issues and not pay taxes on it, and the town would end up with a contaminated lot under tax title. And if the current owner would care to address that issue, that would be fine, by having a proper evaluation of the lot done, or if it was to be put on the lots of a lot or one or more lots of the rest of the subdivision, that would at least put my mind at rest to that. And that's all I'll say at this point. Thank you.
Okay. Members of the board? Pete, you're muted. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Cassandra.
I guess my concern would, kind of be the opposite of what you're all bringing up about the houses being built at the same time. Let's say they don't sell all of the lots and then they have 2 years. So now this could be a 46-year project if each lot is sold every 2 years. And then what's that traffic impact on the neighbors, like the other neighbor had said with that?
If I could, through the chair, I just wanted to clarify. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Cassandra, I apologize for the confusion, but no, that's not the intent. So basically the way it works is there's a restricted covenant on how quickly they would buy the lot and build on their lot. They don't want this to drag on. So it's not, but if the market, and that, to be honest with you, I will tell you, we've been involved in hundreds of subdivisions over the years, and the market dictates what's going to happen here realistically. So even if somebody says there's a restricted covenant or there's not, the reality is somebody's going to buy a lot. Some people, I think what they're trying to do is not have people buy lots and have vacant lots maybe, but the market will realistically dictate what happens here. So if for some reason the absorption rate is 6 houses per year, it's going to take a few years, 3 to 4 years to get the subdivision built out with the houses. The roadway, they anticipate doing this right now, based on the market and all the demand. They anticipate doing this roadway in 2 phases. It would be the first phase, which would be Happy Acres, and then the second leg being the one off the side, Farmer's Way. So that would be done. And by the time they maybe have, not being presumptuous, but assuming they have pre-sales and those types of things where they have people that want to go right in, they might have the first leg. The way the market is right now, I'm seeing subdivisions that have the first, leg or phase spoken for before the roadway is even done. So that could change, but I would say the market typically would dictate a project like this. So it could be anywhere. I've seen projects like this with 23 lots. last 3 years. But realistically, it's probably, by the time everything's built out, it could be 5 years, 3 to 5 years, depending on exactly, who builds when and when they buy the lot, those types of delays. But I wouldn't see, I don't think we have to worry about it being, not built out for a decade or anything like that.
All right, questions from the board?
I just can potentially see that there's going to be a rush to build the roads, which should probably be an inconvenience to the people that are already there. Excuse me. But then I see it slowing down as you have discussed with, maybe 6 houses are built and it's just normal construction going on. So it's going to be kind of a nuisance at the beginning, but it should calm down and just be a normal flow of traffic for 3-4 houses at a time or whatever, which seems reasonable. But I'm concerned like everybody else with 23 houses is at least 50 cars, and 2 trips a day is 106 trips. And that intersection, I don't know. I don't see a good thing coming out of it, but I'm all for development. Believe me, I have new people move into the town and use our land properly is fine. I just see potential for hazards at the intersection.
So Mr. Levesque, before we act on an item, so the planning board meeting agenda is we would meet again on April 5th. We meet again after that on the 19th. We then don't meet again until the 3rd Tuesday of May due to a preliminary election with the town. We then don't meet again until the 3rd Tuesday in June due to the town general election in June. So that is our schedule. Do you have a preference on when we should reschedule, or if we vote to continue the public hearing, when we should continue it to?
So the April 5th meeting, the next available meeting makes sense. I do hear Mr. Kingston's comments. I have a few thoughts as leading up to the idea of the 5th meeting. First, the question is, would the planning board like to see this laid out on the ground? We do have it. It is part of your requirements, so we could certainly do a site visit with you. At that time, I could have Paul Fergal or one of his people from McMahon Associates to look at the intersection with you and kind of describe the process they go through for site distance and other trip generation analyses. So we could do that either together or separately. I could have Paul attend the next meeting because I think that's an item that's been brought up. To Mr. Kingston's questions, I think those are mostly legal lot line changes. So those are pretty easy for us to make. We just have to kind of decide and talk to the attorneys about some of the comments that Mr. Kingston's made. So we're happy to talk to the proponent about that and their attorney. And then as far as any other stuff from Mr. Christensen, those are pretty much housekeeping stuff. So no real design changes, kind of just, make sure you're doing ductile iron, certain type of ductile iron pipe, and just little details that we can certainly, that'd probably be a half a day's worth of work for us to revise those plans. So if it's okay with you, we would like to stick to the 5th. And we would be happy to conduct a site visit with you prior to that date, if that is something the board would like to do.
Mr. Punderson?
Unfortunately, I'm away, and I know it's just me, I'm just one of five members, but I'm going to be coming home on the 5th and won't have a chance to walk the land or have any of that information. And I probably won't make the meeting on the 5th because I'll be traveling late, I would imagine. If you could put it off to the next meeting, it would be good so I could have some input, but I'm only one of 5, so it's just a request.
And I'm actually out of the country the last week of March.
That's right. You're not even here. That's right.
So are you thinking, when would the meeting after the 5th be? Would we have pretty much all the board for the next one?
Yeah, the 19th. I know I'll be here. Yeah.
So, Lord willing, I'll be here.
I don't have a problem with that. I can't speak for my client. Mrs. Goldstein
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
anywhere until the project has come to some,
And Mrs. Goldstein, I just want to assure you that we're just trying to do what's in the best interest of the residents of the town. So that's why we're asking questions. That's why we're seeking answers.
oh, I
just trying-
understand
Okay,
everything you're saying. And they're all things that we talked about and discussed,
Good.
decided and stuff like that.
Good. Okay.
That report, I know I saw something in there about the cars and talking to someone, you just didn't see it. So I, that as a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Like State Road out there, so you might need to get the mass involved, but you can recall down where, near Meadowbrook School, that four-way they had there. And there wasn't even, stuff. They ended up just putting flashing lights there. You could put a flashing light or something if that's what they want.
Maybe, yeah.
Over on
Okay.
Hamden Road, Mrs. Goldstein?
Yeah, yeah. This is not Hamden Road, on Summers Road. It's a state road. So you've got a little bit more going on there than just East Long Meadows.
Yeah.
I mean, but you could put a four-way like they have over on Porter. I don't know, you can lower your traffic speeds, but I don't know what that will do. They see trees, they see an opening, and off they go. Been that way for years. I've lived here for 50 years, so I kind of know what happens on this street.
Um,
But,
that-
this is very fair.
Okay, so I believe, Mr. Kingston, you thought that there should be a continuation. Do you wish to make a motion one way or the other?
Yes, what date did we agree on?
The 19th,
April?
is that correct? Yeah, of April. Correct,
I'll make
Nina?
it-
Nina?
A motion to continue the public hearing until April 19th, 2022 at
Do I have
6 o'clock.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none by roll call. Mr. Kingston?
Aye.
Mr. Punderson?
Aye.
Ms. Chair
Aye.
And I'm a yes as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you. George, could you be so kind to read the next item, please?
Yes, public hearing, case SP 2022-2, request for a special permit for the conversion of an existing manufacturing facility into a private gym at 21 Baldwin Street, Assessors Parcel ID 27-12-21 on a 1.9 plus or minus acre lot located in the industrial zoning district. The applicant is JGM Holdings LLC, 444A North Main Street, Suite 222, East Long Meadow, Mass. 01028.
So who is JGM Holdings? Is there a name associated with that? Nina, do you have a name associated with that?
Phil Burdick, who's on the call right now, is the landscape architect that's been representing them.
Yeah, I'm looking for the petitioner.
Okay, good evening, members of the planning
Mr.
board.
Burdick, I'm looking for the petitioner. You're his representative, I believe, correct?
Yes,
How do I know that he has indicated that you be his representative or her representative?
joining the meeting should be Mr. Brendan Greeley, who's the broker for the property, and Chris McKinnon, who's the proposed owner and developer of the proposal.
That's the person I want to talk to.
Yes,
Yes. So
understood.
Chris, do you wish to have Mr. Burdick represent you in this matter?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. Mr. Burdick.
Yes, good evening, members of the planning board and Ms. Fazio. This project is located on Baldwin Street. It's an as the proposal mentions, it's an existing industrial property. The industrial tenant will be leaving. The property is up for sale. The proposed developer wishes to purchase the property and move his existing business, which is known to you as Pioneer Gym, from his existing location, which is a rental space, to this he will be both the developer owner and the tenant as well. The existing building is a one-story industrial building. It's located on the east side of Baldwin Street, about halfway down. It's about roughly 100 yards from the intersection of Maple Street. I don't know if you're familiar with the property. The current use is industrial, so there are a number of loading docks, tractor trailer trucks, and shipping containers actually located on the site. These will all be removed in favor of the development. The development is proposed to be provide a private facility for gymnastics and also for martial arts. It'll be somewhat of an expansion of the space that he's in now. There will also be some associated space for some, like if kids want to have birthday parties, et cetera, for that. The primary changes, we're not making any changes to the footprint of the building. It will remain as is. We will be making exterior improvements, which will involve both exterior finishes and in some portions of the building where it's masonry, exterior insulation. We'll be maintaining the existing parking areas around the building. The significant site changes are changes to the actual access from the street. The current access from the street, I don't know if I can attach a site plan here to show you what we're talking about. Let's see if I can do that. Let's see if I can get this up. I believe that we have submitted a copy of the site plan, see if I can get a view of that on there. So. All right, well, while I'm working on that, let me continue to explain. The existing curb cuts are primarily there's a large curb cut along the front of the property, which is currently used as a loading dock. That loading dock will be eliminated, and in its place, we'll construct a new entry driveway that will allow for drop-off of participants in the program. That the existing parking or existing actual truck trailer parking along the front of the building would be converted to automobile parking. The existing automobile parking on the north side of the building will remain maintained with the existing pavement. So that's primarily the site changes. We will be creating reducing existing curb cuts along the street and replacing those with a green space separating the street from the parking areas. I don't know if there's any questions so far on what we're proposing. So,
Questions from the board so far?
I believe this was duct tack that was in there.
yes, correct. So,
And I think this is great reuse of the building.
Yep, fabulous. Yep.
I don't know if Chris wants to make any comments about his proposed operation in the facility. So.
No, I think it's a good opportunity to recondition that building and utilize, moving next door, right? We sort of have a lot more parking spaces than we do currently, which would help the facility greatly.
And thank you for your investment in the town. Greatly appreciate it.
We have one issue having to do with parking, since that's usually one of the site plan issues that comes up in the town. Is that in accordance with the building code? The building code designates the number of occupancies, with the number of occupants, which dictates the amount of egress that's required from the building, and that's based on square footage. That occupancy required for egress is significantly more than what Chris plans in terms of the number of occupants in the building. So for providing 100 parking spaces, according to our interpretation of the zoning, that allows us to have 300 occupants, which is still in excess of what they anticipate even at full capacity. So one of the issues we have is at the north side of the building, we're proposing 7 parking spaces that kind of go where the containers are now. Chris's operation requires him to have at least a significant amount of green space outside the building. and you'd like to, modify the proposal as presented to you by eliminating those 7 spaces, reducing the spaces to 93 total, which includes 12 or 13 spaces for employees, a fan accessible handicap space near the front entrance, as well as 2 other handicap spaces. The 93 spaces using the same marker of 3 occupants per space would allow a total occupancy of 279, which is still probably at least between 80 and 100 more people than Chris would normally expect to be in the building, and more than he would expect at any time, even during full occupancy. So in that case, we just want to make sure that we both comply with the requirements of the building code, but also comply with the requirements of the zoning. If the board wishes to say, okay, we're going to restrict the property to 279 occupants, we don't have an issue with that. As far as any other issues regarding the zoning, we believe we are in compliance with those. We have submitted it for a zoning review, which is a requirement of the planning board application, and that has been returned to us as compliant with the zoning. So
I'm going to open it to the public because it is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard on this matter? Please raise your hand. You can be brought into the meeting. Again, I ask if there's anyone who wishes to be heard on this matter, would you please raise your hand and you can come into the meeting. Hearing none and seeing none, I have a motion to, if so desired by the board, to close the public hearing.
So moved, George.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, by roll call to close the public hearing. Mr. Kingston?
Aye.
Mr. Punderson?
Aye.
Mr. Terraswello?
Aye.
And I'm a yes as well. So back to the board. I just do have a question for Chris. So do you anticipate the same hours of operation as you currently have?
We do.
And do you anticipate any new features in the new building that you don't already have in the existing building?
Enhanced training capabilities.
Okay.
More students. Yep.
Yeah, okay, good. All right. Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the special permit.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the special permit for this item. Any discussion? Hearing none, by roll call, Mr. Punderson,
Aye.
Ms. Terraswello,
Aye.
Mr. Kingston,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well, so this matter passes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, Chris.
Yep, good luck.
Chris, have a good evening.
Mr. Kingston, next item, please. You're muted, George.
There we go. My key didn't work.
Hmm.
Case ST 2022-3, request for a special permit amendment for a dog daycare facility for Canine and Pets Dog Training LLC at 576 North Main Street. Assessors parcel ID 1A-91-571 in an existing structure located in the business zoning district. The applicant is Canine and Pets Dog Training LLC, care of Sergio Nieves, 576 North Main Street, East Long Meadow, Mass. 01028.
Hello again.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, and you?
So you are on camera.
Yeah.
I know that you have forwarded a lot of materials to the board members, but for those people who might be watching this on TV or through the Zoom, would you just please let people know what your plans are, what additional plans you have for this space?
Yes, it's just to add I'm a dog training company, but it's just to add a doggy daycare. just for to take care of the dogs, that when the people is working or doing their things during the day, so I can take care of them, let them play and watch them, so they are not alone in their house.
Okay. So I think the last time that you were here, when we approved the use of the building to do dog training, and I know you've been doing that for a few months, you indicated that this may be a possibility. And I know that we urged you to kind of prepare a operating plan, how you were going to go about operating the additional services you propose, because obviously this building has a history to it, and the former owner has a history to it. I'm trying to be as kind as possible, and that obviously there's a lot of concern. Obviously, everybody loves their pets, as do I. We don't want an incident like that to reoccur. There was actually some legislation filed in Boston. I think they referred to it as Ollie's Law.
Yeah.
I did a little research on it. It has not gone anywhere yet in the legislature, so it has not been enacted. So it is really kind of up to this board to use their best judgment on conditions that we would want to see in the operation of this type of business. So we did invite the animal control officers with the town to look at your proposal. They did make certain recommendations, which were forwarded to this board, and I know that they were forwarded to you. Don't know whether, Melissa, do you want to start and just talk about your suggestions and why you suggested those as conditions?
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, board. Excuse if I go back and forth. I have to go to my notes. I'm on my phone. Our suggestions are number one, the training day camp. We kind of feel it's already a doggy daycare because the customer drops off the dog in the morning and picks up the dog, after they're done being trained, sometime during the day / evening. And in respects to that, Mass General Law, Chapter 140, a commercial boarding or a training kennel. It's the definition of a kennel, 3 or more dogs that are being boarded, daycare, holding, overnight stays, etc. And in respects to that, they would need a commercial kennel license. At this time, the town of East Long Meadow has a bylaw that does not allow commercial boarding kennel license. The only reason why Porter Road Pet Care has the commercial kennel license. Hold on one second. They're exempt from that is because Porter Road Pet Care has been in operation since 1935, and the bylaw as it was in operation prior to that bylaw being implemented. Having a facility where a customer is allowed to drop off their dog in the morning and pick up afterwards, and the owner of the dog is not staying with them, that's technically a daycare. Whether it's playtime, being trained, kenneled, it's a daycare. The same issue is what we had with Pampered Pets at the time when that issue with Ollie. They did not have a commercial license, and the town has not changed its bylaws to allow commercial licenses to be issued. So the board would have to take that into consideration. Another consideration would be mandatory reporting of bites. The Department of Agriculture with it's called the Massachusetts Code of Regulation 330. Any person having knowledge of an animal being bit has to report it. whether you're a veterinarian or a manager of a facility, it needs to be reported no matter what. And that was also not implemented with our past residents of that facility. And that's why we never received the bite until almost a week after it happened. So we strongly would suggest that if the board were to mandate or give a special permit, that it must be mandated for any bites to be reported immediately. Paul, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
I think those were our two big issues.
Okay, Sergio, do you want to respond?
Yeah. So when I said in the beginning, in the first permit, that I was doing the training day camp, first, I believe I'm not doing a daycare under the guise of a training day camp. That's something, right? So when you say daycare, and I know the ACO, they said the state doesn't difference between kennel or daycare. But when people refer to daycare, is to leave the dog playing in groups. And what I'm doing, and I was really specific that if the person dropped the dog in the morning and pick up the dog in the afternoon, the dog is going to be with one person training, so not in groups. So when that dog is training, is with one person, in this case, it's with me because I'm the trainer right now. When I finish with that dog, I take the other dog, train the dog, and put it back in the kennel. Actually, I haven't had any dog for the training day camp since I opened. I'm just doing private lessons, one-on-one. But I don't believe I'm doing a daycare because my first thought was to add a kennel license, to apply for a kennel license. But when I went to the bylaws, it doesn't allow a kennel license in any of the zonings.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, what about the other two daycares that are in the town? So do they have a kennel license? Or because I'm willing to have a kennel license, I would like to have a kennel license.
So I'll allow Melissa, can you answer that question?
To my knowledge, I only have 2 other private kennels and 1 commercial kennel, which is Porter Road Pet Care. There are no other daycares. There are 3 other grooming facilities, but the one that I know on North Main is by appointment only. In other words, they pick up their dog and as soon as the appointment is done. So the dog is not boarded at all during the day or, evening at that facility. And I just went to the dog spot and they were just grooming.
Because the dog shops has a website that say they care. That's what I'm asking.
So what is the one by Coughlin's? Is that just grooming?
Is that the Baldwin Street?
Yes.
No, the one by Coughlin's.
Just grooming.
Okay.
The one Sergio is referring to, from personal experience, they do offer that service.
Well, which one? Which site?
The dog shop.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. So the proposal is out there. Is there any, and this is a public hearing, so I will, unless there are other questions from the board before I open the public hearing, George or Pete or Cassandra? So I'd like to open the public hearing. Yes, Pete.
You're muted.
You're muted, Pete.
Melissa, hi, Pete Punderson. if we go through this proposal, it will require him to have a commercial license. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. At my knowledge, the bylaws in East Long Meadow do not allow that.
Right, right.
And
Okay.
he that section from me or
So
Just want to be clear on that. Thanks, Melissa.
Mr. Kingston?
My understanding is that the zoning bylaw for East Long Meadow speaks specifically to boarding kennels and not to daycare. So if the dogs are not kept overnight, then they're not in violation of the zoning bylaw. A kennel license bylaw would have to be something that the town council would have to take up. That's not a zoning issue, okay? But specifically, my understanding, I've been through this many years now, is that the bylaw only prohibits overnight boarding kennels.
If I may add something.
Sure.
So the definition, according to the zoning bylaws for a commercial kennel, is any structure or premises in which dogs and or cats are kept, boarded, bred, or trained for commercial gain. So just by the zoning definition, it would be a commercial kennel.
Can I see something?
Hold on, I'm going to ask Mr. Kingston to maybe respond because he and Mr. Punderson have been on this board longer than anyone, and I'm sure they've seen this before. So I'd like to hear what they might have to say.
Okay.
Again, I wasn't here when we wrote that bylaw. My understanding of kept was that meant kept overnight. Okay. And that's why Porter Road is the only one that can do it because they were pre-existing non-conforming. But the intent, every time we've discussed it, has been to not have dogs being boarded overnight because of the noise issue. And I understand that it's now obsolescent, but we have never reviewed the bylaw to talk about whether it's a noise issue or something else. But my understanding has always been that it meant overnight boarding of dogs.
Okay. Pete, do you want to add to that?
Well, I don't think that I ever came up against this when I was on the board previously, but Paul, if you're saying that our zoning bylaw says that it's any dog that's bred, groomed, trained, whatever.
No, not grooming.
Okay.
Grooming.
Or trained, or what'd you say was specifically contained in that?
So in the definitions on the zoning bylaws,
right,
it says section 8, page 8, commercial kennel is any structure or premises in which dogs and or cats are kept, boarded, bred, or trained for commercial gain.
Kept for how long?
It doesn't say how long.
Yeah,
doesn't say.
I guess I'm confused. I'm confused. Then how did Pampered Pets operate then? Melissa, it didn't come through.
Oh, I was going to add, just with the definition it gave, it doesn't intend for the common ear that it would be intended for overnight boarding, because training I don't see happening overnight.
So Melissa, can you tell us how then Pampered Pets was allowed to open and operate for a period of time?
I was not aware of when they started. I think they started before I became ACO, and they were under the pretext of a daycare, which they did not think they needed, I guess, or nobody had caught that they have a kennel license or prop kennel license, a commercial one. They should have never been able to house those dogs without for licensure.
So I need to open this to the public. So if there is, I'm opening the public hearing, and if there's anyone who wishes to be heard on this matter, would you please raise your hand? You can be brought into the meeting. I'll say again, if there's anyone here who wishes to be heard on this matter, please raise your hand and you can be brought into the meeting. Hearing none and seeing none, I will leave it at that. Sergio, you wanted to respond?
Yes.
Okay.
So like I said about the Biden report, we can adopt that policy. We can report the bites. The other thing is, when I first did the first permit, I clarified that I was going to open early in the morning, like at 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., right? I explained to you that those hours are because I was planning for a daycare. I haven't opened at that time because I don't have a daycare. But the training, more of my training is at night after works, because the group lessons, people have to get out of the work and come by and train their dogs. So for the daycare, I'm not planning on keeping the dogs overnight, and I'm not planning on keeping the dogs till night, because it's like daycare. So people get out of work and come by and pick up their dogs. So it's usually till 5:30, 6 p.m. The hours, the time, usually we use for the daycare. And the other thing I was gonna say about the kennel license, so that's what I said. It's a special permit in just two zonings, in business and in industrial. It's just a special permit because in the other zonings, it's not going to go through because it say not allowed. So,
board members, comments, suggestions?
I can just comment that the interpretation I gave you is the one that I've been led to believe we were using for the last 15 years. But I agree that our bylaw can be ambiguous, and some of the wording may not be exact, but that's what we had been looking at. So, and understanding that there are no statutory standards, all I'll say is that I am impressed with the credentials of the applicant and also with the plan that he has put forward, including his standards.
I would like to address that's a great point, Mr. Kingston. So you have put forward guidelines from an, I believe, is it Dog Guru? Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the only thing you can find. And I talked with the organizations I'm partnered with, and I'm a member with. You can find that. That's the most standard thing you can find from our organization. And if you see in my proposal, I even put 15 dogs per one employee. So my example in the proposal, in the narrative, was like, if you have 20 dogs in the premise, that doesn't mean they're gonna be together, because my plan is to have small groups of dogs while the other ones are resting. So if you say one staff member for every 10 to 12 dogs, so if you have 10 dogs playing and you have 2 staff members, like employees, you can have both of them with those 10 dogs. And I talk in the narrative too, I'm gonna have a backup member if it's necessary to use it in case of an emergency. I have talked to veterinarians around, because the issue with the emergency rooms for veterinarians is for all the town. Pet owners, pet businesses has the same issues. So the closest emergency room for veterinarian is 20 minutes from me. The other businesses are a little farther away, but the good thing is I have next door a veterinarian, and I talk to them and they are willing to do urgent care in case of an emergency. So they are willing to do that. They're gonna and make a form and everything for my clients to do that in case of an emergency. And actually, I'm a certified of a CPR and first aid for trauma for dogs. So we have the plan.
All right, board members. Melissa?
Yes, just one more question. What happens if a client should happen to forget to pick up their dog and you can't contact them, like they're not answering their phone? Or do you have a set of action of to bring the dog if they don't pick them up?
Yeah. I have 2 vans that I can use for pet taxi.
Okay.
All right, so what's the desire of the board?
I'm still
I'll make
confused.
a motion to close the public hearing.
Well, George, just based upon the hearing we did with Happy Acres, I didn't know if we wanted to maybe leave it open if there were any unanswered questions. But if you're okay making a motion to close the public hearing, I'm willing to put it before the board. Someone wish to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Hearing none. By roll call to close the public hearing, Mr. Kingston,
Aye.
Mr. Punderson,
Aye.
Mr. Charisuelo,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. So the public hearing is closed. Back to the board again. Does a board member wish to put a motion on the table? Mr. Punderson.
Are we doing something against our own bylaws or not? I'm confused.
So I personally have a great deal of faith in Mr. Kingston's interpretations, considering the length of time that both he and you have been on this board. So I'm inclined to use George's interpretation that it would be overnight boarding.
I think a note should be made. Nina should make a note that this needs to be cleared up. This particular part of the bylaw needs to be a little more concrete. That's all.
Nina, go ahead.
Yep, just if I could add one thing, because I had the same question when Sergio brought it to my attention. But in the town bylaw, there is a fee schedule for kennel licenses with the town clerk. So I was reading it the same way that George is, and then a kennel license was available for sale by the town clerk. But I can clarify that with them as well.
Okay. Thanks.
So George, do you wish to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the special permit with the conditions recommended by the animal control officer.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made and second. Any further discussion? So I would like to maybe propose, if I could, additional conditions. So Sergio, the conditions as prepared and presented by the animal control officers, I believe there were more than 2. Nina, would you happen to have those available?
This is the summary of PCO
Yes.
recommendations.
Yes, can you read those, please?
So the first one was addressing if the board's going to allow commercial kennels or not.
Okay.
This needs to apply for more than 3 dogs or care.
So you're
Second is
fading in.
imposing a mandate for dogs. The third, can you hear me now?
Better now, yeah.
So the second recommendation was imposing a mandatory reporting of dog bites.
Yep.
The third was record keeping of rabies vaccination and verifications.
Yep.
The fourth was record keeping of names and addresses of the owners of each dog at the kennels, and having that available for inspection by an ACO. And then the
Okay.
fifth was an implementation of an emergency plan, i.e. making arrangements with a local hospital.
Which sounds okay. And I would also like to incorporate, Sergio, those standards which you submitted to this board from, did I get it right? Is it dog? I don't have it in front of me. The dog guru?
Dog gurus, yeah.
Dog gurus. So that they actually be part of the conditions of the operation as well. Do I have accept a friendly amendment to your motion, Mr. Kingston?
Accepted.
And that makes me feel really good about it too. I'm sure Sergio is going to do a good job, and
yeah,
that's in there. So any inspection that ever comes along, he's going to have to, abide by the rules. So that's good.
And quite honestly, Sergio, these come, I think, from our past experience with the previous, owner of the previous business that was there. We held a public hearing, and we were I think at the end of the public hearing on the revocation of that special permit, I think we probably all agreed that we did not have sufficient measures in place to determine the safety of the animals and the operation of that business. And I think by having these conditions on, I think this board feels better that we have a handle on something that would provide the safety, I think, that you want as well for your customers and their pets, and we all want. And I think that the animal control officers of the town feel better about. So, okay.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, about the keeping records and everything. We are doing that already, because I always have for a dog to be trained, I need the rabies, the distemper, whatever records. I have to keep them, because it's my safety too. So if the dog is not vaccinated, they cannot come to training. And additional, my plan was to meet the animal control officers, because as a former animal control officer, I was. So I would like to establish a relationship, because I need to know who I'm working with, who I have to call and everything. Now now in the meeting, so I met you. So
Okay.
So yeah, that's just that.
So if the board would indulge me, so I see a hand up. I know we've closed the public hearing, but there is a hand up that would like to be heard on this matter. What's the board's pleasure?
Oh, I jumped the gun, Russ. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So you brought the person in?
I did. I apologize. I didn't.
Okay, you did jump the gun a little bit. Okay.
But you could still get the pleasure of the board, and I could.
Pleasure of the board for the individual to be heard.
The public hearing's closed, Russ.
Okay, I'm sorry, the public hearing's closed.
No,
Okay.
my apologies too. She's
Okay.
actually not here anyway.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion been made, it's been seconded with a listing of conditions. Any further discussion? Hearing none, by roll call. Mr. Kingston,
Aye.
Mr. Punderson,
Aye.
Ms. Charisuelo,
Aye.
and I'm a yes as well. Okay,
Good luck, Sergio.
good
Thank
luck.
you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next item, Mr. Kingston. George?
All we have is the director's report.
So Nina, do you want to add?
I have some info on the next meeting if you would like. What's on the agenda so far?
Great.
A few
Oh.
waivers, a special permit for massage therapy. The Verizon hearing has been refiled, and I believe that rounds it out for April 5th. Oh, and Happy Acres just got continued.
And so I have a couple of items if I could, two two individuals were interviewed for the Director of Planning and Community Development for the town. One individual was offered the position and has accepted. I don't think I'm at liberty to disclose the name yet, but their anticipated start date is Monday, April 4th. So there's been some movement. So that's wonderful. The second thing is we continued till tonight. And I know that Nina sent out some additional information, but whether we wish to discuss further this evening, the consultant that the town would retain to review the findings from Verizon as part of their cell phone application. I think we were down, ended up being 4. One was a company called Isotrope, one was Cityscape, one was IDK Connection, and the other one was a gentleman named Walter Cooper, radio frequency planning and consultation. Thank you for all the hard work on that, Nina. Greatly appreciate it. I did what I think was, a fair amount of looking into these individuals. I looked at the organizations that they had worked with. I looked at some of the towns that they had worked with. I looked at some of the work product that they had produced. I'm ready to make a recommendation and to vote if others are. As Nina said, the public hearing for this is scheduled for Tuesday, April 5th. We can either do it this evening, and then once we open the public hearing, hear the initial work, then we can retain the individual. I don't know how you want to do it, but I'll leave it to the board for some discussion.
What did you come up for a recommendation, Russ?
I was going to recommend Isotrope. It's a David Maxon. I believe he has done a lot of work in Massachusetts. That would be my recommendation.
Has he done any work for Verizon at all?
They all have done some type of work for Verizon.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Verizon is the largest, carrier in the region, certainly, if not the country. But
Well, I have no knowledge of this at all, so I would go with the chairman's recommendation. Also, being an attorney, I'm sure that you have vetted it out pretty well.
Yeah, but I'm certainly not a communications attorney.
I would agree with Pete. I think your recommendation is a great one. I would suggest that we get the sense of the board that that's the right person to go with, but that to vote to retain them should come after we have the next hearing opened.
Okay. Everybody agree with that? And I think what we maybe, Nina, maybe you and I can touch base tomorrow. Hopefully, maybe Thursday is a little better for me. We can send communication to Mr. Maxon to ask for a draft scope of service and a contract. So at least we can review that and be ready when necessary.
Okay, sounds good.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Yes.
And everyone, thank you for your patience. George, go ahead.
I have just 2 quick items. I had requested that on April 15th, we begin discussing zoning for automobile charging stations. Yep. And I have found some information, which I will send to Nina to send out to the board to look at as a start. It's going to be a long process to get there, but we need to start it. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the issue that we began in East Long Meadow on solar bylaw and the restrictiveness or non-restrictiveness of the solar bylaw is currently before the Supreme Judicial Court on a case from Eastern Mass. And arguments on that are being heard right now. You may want to try to follow that just to see or Nina, perhaps you could keep an eye on that and keep us informed as to where that's going. but it's possible that some greater restrictions that land court has allowed may come out of that. We don't know. It's a court case. Could be anything. But just to let you know that, make you aware of that.
Good. And after maybe my COVID hangover is almost over, I'm going to ask the new planning and community development director to draft potential changes to our bylaws for your consideration sometime this summer or early fall, as it relates to recreational vehicles, campers, boats, unregistered vehicles, and their placement on property in town. As you've all seen me walk around town, I think it might be time. Might be, but certainly we'll have to have hearings on this, but might be time to tighten some of that up. So, but don't really, it's not the place right now to discuss it until it's actually introduced, but I just want to let people know that it might be coming, or probably will be coming. So, okay. If there's no other business, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Third, fourth, fifth.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Everybody have a great evening.
You too.
Thank you for your patience.